All right, we ready? Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May 1st, 2024 Bruce Township Planning Commission meeting. Our start time is 6:16 p.m. Dana, will you please call the roll?
Ed Cupits.
Present.
Rick Hagelstein.
Here.
Randy Camp.
Here.
Anne Marie Boyce.
Here.
Mandy Barnett.
Here.
Mike Tremblay.
Here.
Jared Vincent.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum. Before we start the business part of our meeting, I would ask that everyone rise and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this is a public business meeting of the Planning Commission. We do welcome public comments at various points throughout our agenda. We request that you sign in if you haven't already done so on the sheet to your left, and that will help give us a record of who is here in attendance. The commission is made up of 7 Bruce Township residents appointed by the board. In addition, we have Dana Buchanan to my left, who assists us as the planning coordinator. And on my right is Joe Tangari, professional planner with Giffords Webster, who advises us on our work. There will be an opportunity for public questions and comments. We would ask that you keep those comments to 3 minutes roughly, unless you're representing multiple people or multiple residents within your neighborhood. Additional time may be granted if necessary and appropriate. When you do come to the podium, we ask you to state your name and address so we can get a record of who is speaking. And please address your comments to the commissioners and not anybody directly in the audience. All right. First up is the approval of the minutes from the April 3rd Planning Commission meeting. Commissioners, you have this in your packet. Are there any edits that need to be noted?
No edits, just a couple comments. On page 3, the strategic business park parcel in the middle of the page, C2 to M1. That was considered with conditions at our April Board of Trustees meeting. We did finalize an amendment 5 to approve the conditional rezoning for that parcel.
So the board has approved that?
The board has approved it. Yep, and the amendment has been signed. Top of page 5, with ordinance 187 and 161. Joe, that I take is 10H on today's agenda.
Yes.
And that is it. I'm good. I'll make a motion to approve the Bruce Township Planning Commission meetings of April 3rd,
Second.
2024 as printed.
Second.
Motion by Tremblay, second by Hagelstein. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item 5 on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for this evening. I do have one edit. We've received a request to make 10A move up closer due to scheduling conflicts, so I would suggest we put that right after item 6, which is the public comment. Any objections or any other edits needed to make on the agenda?
I'll second the motion to amend the agenda as suggested.
All right, motion by Vincent, second by Tremblay to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay?
Oh, I do have a question.
Okay.
10I. Is that still on the agenda, or is that, should be taken off?
Well, do you want me to take, I can certainly take it off now or leave it as a placeholder.
I thought we had agreed last meeting to move it to August.
Well, we did, but like the 5G, I just left it as a, until it happens, but I can take it off.
Oh, you just left it on as a placeholder? Okay,
Yeah, I spoke to the applicant. He was assuming we would just continue the table.
okay. Okay, I'm good.
Motion carries to approve the agenda as amended. That brings us to item 6, which is our public comment. So now is the time if you'd like to address the Planning Commission. And any items, please come to the podium, state your name and address, and let us know.
Hello, Jonathan Curry from PEA Group, 7927 Nemco Way, Brighton, Michigan, 48116. And I am here with Guy Rizzo from GTR Companies, and we wanted to give you a quick overview of a project that we're considering that we applied for a variance for in February. Dana and Mike suggested we come in and talk to you guys before we go through that process of getting the variance. And the intent of getting the variance ahead of site plan was that the site really depends on these couple variances. And are you able to bring up the overhead with the PDFs?
Yeah, do you have,
Or I can hand out 11 by 17s if that's easier.
I think any of them.
Okay,
Any of that would be quicker, probably.
okay, all right.
Yes, yes, sir.
Is this site plan concept 4-4.02?
Yes, and what you have is what we submitted with the variance application in February. So if you've looked it over, basically what they're proposing at the northeast corner of 33 and McKay is about a 40,000 square foot retail center. Various possible tenants, including a restaurant, a drive-through restaurant. And the difficulty with the site is that there is 2 ordinance items that are making it very difficult to get a loading area for these buildings. We have 3 frontages, and you can't have a loading area in the frontage. So we've placed one of the loading areas on the private road that goes back to the homestead. And then on the north, because it's residential, there's a 100-foot loading zone setback requirement, which makes it difficult to make the site work. You'd have to put customer parking on the other side of loading and truck traffic. And so if you look at that plan, you can see where we've put them. Look like a typical spot, but unfortunately, the ordinance, the way it's written with the frontages, we're kind of stuck with those locations. And we wanted to get these variances ahead of site plan because it really makes the site. Like without those variances, it's a completely different site. I'm not sure yet how we'd even do it. So we're here today to hopefully, if you have a chance to look at that layout, and if you have any thoughts or concerns with the variance requests that before we go to the ZBA, we could have some input on those items.
That's the only variance you're asking for?
There's 2, both with loading zone. One is the loading zone setback to the north, and one is allowing a loading zone in the front yard on the Homestead Boulevard side.
So 2 variances, but they're both the same loading zone.
For the same purpose, correct. Without it, the only place to put a loading zone is on the north side, more than 100 feet from the property line. So if you look at that site plan, you can see how that's a difficulty to try to find a spot to do that and make that the easterly building usable, because it'd be functionally difficult to make a retail center work without a loading zone adjacent to the users.
Okay, so 2 ordinance variations that you're seeking, the loading zone to the north and the loading zone to the east.
Correct. And you'll see a cross section there of what we propose as a treatment between the properties to better screen the residential from that loading zone. And the buildings, the actual loading zone to the first residential building is about 110 feet. So even though we're 54 feet proposed from the property line, it's still over 110 feet to an actual residential building to the north.
So you're 54 feet, and what, refresh my memory, what the ordinance says, is it 100?
It says 100 feet to the nearest loading zone from the residential property line, not from the building.
Okay.
So if there's any questions or input, or,
I noticed the building on the northwest, the farthest northwest has a drive-through window.
correct.
Joe, would that require an SLU?
This is C2.
C2.
At a minimum, let's see. Banks, credit unions, drugstores, and the like with drive-through facilities or a special land use.
I thought when we met in January, we sorted out that a drive-through restaurant in this zoning, one of the recent use changes, I thought allowed it without special land use, but that's been a while ago.
It's definitely not permitted without a special land use.
Okay.
And C2, I see drive-through facilities for banks, credit unions, drugstores, and the like. As a special land use.
Yeah, I thought that we sorted this out when we met in January, that it was, that there was something in the ordinance or that recently changed in the ordinance that this was, that the drive-through was permitted. There was nothing in the ordinance relating to like stacking spaces or anything, but that the use itself was allowed.
Yeah, and C3, there's one that includes restaurants and. Yeah, I don't see where restaurant drive-throughs are permitted in C2.
You're not seeing it in there, Joe, as a SLU for C2?
Not for C2,
So not permitted use or SLU?
no.
What type of establishment is being named?
It would be a coffee shop type, correct, Guy? Coffee shop. Now, I'll have to look at my January notes when I get back there tomorrow, because
Yeah, we
I
might.
thought we were past that, that particular item.
Listed as banks, credit unions, and ATMs or drive-throughs.
Yeah.
Right, but then C3 specifically speaks to where you can do an SLU for a restaurant, including a drive-through, and it's.
Okay. So we'll probably need to get clarity on that. It looks
Yeah,
like,
that's-
from what we're understanding, that's not going to be covered under C2, so.
Yeah, we'll have to, again, I'll look back at my notes from January and talk to Joe and figure out, again, I thought we were ironed that out already. So
Okay.
if there's any other additional comments specifically to the variances, that's our biggest concern here
Okay.
is that there's some support for those variances before we go to ZBA.
Any other thoughts from the commissioners on the variances that have been discussed? You know, we're not voting on them. It's really just anything to share back with the applicant.
I think that's the only one that's a question.
Yeah.
The drive-through is the only question you got.
Pardon me?
You're saying the drive-through is the only issue that,
On the surface, yeah.
right, variance-wise, though, generally, planning commission is, I know it's not record on the books, but just informally, generally in favor of those, the variances for the purposes.
Right, I think we're, you know.
I know it's not
We're not voting on
binding.
it,
I
but I
understand
think
it's not
you're not hearing any major objections.
That's kind of, I think, the reason Dana and Mike wanted us here was just to get
Yeah,
some agreement before the ZBA looks at it.
understood. Did you have something to add?
No, I was just going to say,
Okay.
Yeah, we
The
understand.
ZBA has certain criteria they look at when they grant a variance. I'm sure you're
Right.
familiar with those.
Yeah, we submitted the application back in February, so we've addressed all the.
no guarantee,
standard.
but no strong objections.
Gotcha.
For clarification, the drive-through is not covered in C2. Is it permitted use or SLU? So
But that being said, that does not stop an applicant from coming in with an SLU outside what we have included in the list. Is that correct?
Well, we wouldn't be able to.
Wouldn't be able
Yeah,
to
we
prove
wouldn't be
anything.
able to do it.
Oh, okay, all right. It doesn't make sense to do it. Okay, all right. I was unclear what direction. It's a different request. I just unclear what direction we were headed with it, so thanks for the clarification.
Okay. All good?
Yeah, I guess that's all we got tonight.
All right. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, is there anyone else here for public comment? This would be anything that's not on the agenda? Anything you just wish to come and address the planning commission? Seeing none? We will move on to our updated agenda item, which was 10A, the Muir rezoning.
No.
What? Oh, we,
Martin special.
No.
we adjusted the agenda.
Yeah. We moved the Muir rezone after public comment.
Oh, okay, where were you going from there? I'm sorry, I misunderstood, go ahead.
Yeah, already approved in the agenda, so we're good. Come on, Dan.
Good evening, Dan Walker on behalf of Jessica Muir for the rezoning request that was submitted towards the back end of last year, I believe. Simply coming to request an extension on that, one final one, preferably through your July meeting. Very briefly, we originally, when we came, did not know that the lot itself was 5 or more acres until that night. So then that required the impact study to be done. In between that time and when we were supposed to come back in, I think it was February or March, we procured a deal to sell 33 of those 39 acres. And there was just didn't know how much they were going to take, how the lot lines were going to go. That's all settled now. She's under contract with an engineering firm to get the impact study done, and assuming this extension gets approved, it should kick off tomorrow, and they're telling us it'll be 5 to 6 weeks. So
Okay. Is the 33 acres, was that the residential part?
correct.
Not part of the, okay.
Yep.
I see no issue with extending the table to the, coming back in July, or no later than?
No later than July.
Okay.
Yep.
Any objections? I'll make a motion.
Quick question. Is now okay?
Sure, of course.
It was in November, and my question is really a kind of a procedural one, being new. There were a lot of people at that meeting, a lot of publics, because it was a public hearing. Since it's been 8 months, will there be another public hearing, or will we be actually, more importantly, notifying the people within that 300 feet, I think, since it's been 8 months?
Well, I have something more direct than that. At that meeting, we never closed the public hearing. So this item should have actually been a public hearing, not an unfinished business. We never
Okay.
closed it.
So
We left it open on purpose.
Right, so if it's open on purpose, it is open, how do the people within that relevant
They should be renoticed.
renoticed? Because I think that's important.
Yep.
Be different if it was just a couple months.
Good call out, Anne Marie, appreciate that. So Dana, I think we will need to, as we understand when this would come back, we need to make sure that that's in the public hearing, that there's notices sent out.
The 2 weeks to get it in the paper.
Okay.
So if you're going to come
2 weeks. Sure.
All right, I would make a motion to extend the table until no later than the July Planning Commission meeting, July 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
Support.
Seconded by Kupitz. Do we need a roll call, or is this a verbal?
We should do a roll call.
Okay, Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Randy Pan,
Yes.
Anne Marie Boyce.
Yes.
Mandy Burnett,
Yes.
Mike Tremblay,
Yes.
Rich Hazelstein,
Yes.
Ed Kupitz.
Yes.
Jerry Winstead.
Yes.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, item 7 on the agenda is the public hearings related to the Martin special land use. That's okay.
Good evening, James Martin, 77622 Pearl Drive. Request special land use for a pole barn build.
And can you tell us what is the nature of the special land use that brings you?
I want to build it on the west side of my property. It's due to the south side of where the house sits. It's hardship. The topography is the elevation changes are quite drastic. There's 13 vacant acres behind me, large trees. To the west is DeQuinder on the corner lot on Pearl. I got 10.1 acres. It's 5-acre minimum on the road there. So there's nobody to the west of me. DeQuinder, the pole barn will sit roughly 300 plus feet off of DeQuinder Drive, so there won't be no variance there for future expansion of DeQuinder. Just really looking to get permission to use the west side of my property where it's flat and level, and I want to put it'll sit level with my house, basically. It's sit back. It won't be in front of it. It'll be 10 the house is kind of an L-shaped in the way it sits, and it's going to line up with where our son's room is, which is above our garage. It's going to line up with that in the front of the pole barn, and then work its way to the south and end up finishing out where our back of our house is. So it's going to sit on the property peak to peak, pretty much, I guess, facing the same way. So the roof lines look good. They're going to match the house. It's going to be black and white, same as my house. I mean, any other questions, really? I mean, for me, I mean.
I have one
Sure.
question right now. You mentioned 10 acres behind you. Is that acreage owned by you or someone else?
No, that's owned by another family. It's very little use. It's very rural. I do know of them, but they don't frequent the property, but to do some rabbit hunting. So.
Dana, they would have been given notice of this?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, everybody received the letter. I have a letter of support from the neighbor who lives across from me. I have one neighbor who lives directly across from me, and then one to the east. And then after that, they kind of worked their way quite a ways down, a couple thousand feet. But there's a letter of support there from the neighbor across the street. And he's not objective, great guy. We moved in around September last year, finished the build, took 2 years. Sister lives at the end of the road, so it's good to the community. Just looking to get permission to use my land to add a pole barn.
Yep, any questions for the applicant?
Are we still-
Yep, go ahead.
You personally own 10 acres, correct?
I personally, 10.11.
Okay. And are you aware of the maximum size of accessory building you can put on 10 acres?
I'm fairly, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's around 3,200 square feet. I was looking to do a 60 by 64 in there. I very well may end up going to a 64 by 48, so it's going to be under the 3,200. So if the problem is the size, my main floor of my house is a ranch. It's 3,600 square feet. So I felt that bringing it below the 3,600 would be sufficient, so.
I think besides, the main floor of your house, for 10 acres, our ordinance allows 3,270.
Okay.
And I think you're over by about 570 square.
Correct, yes,
So are you willing to make it smaller?
I am willing to make it smaller. I'm willing to reduce the town to a 48 by 64. It just,
It's 3,000.
that's 3,050-ish, 3,070, so.
Okay.
Do you want me to make it smaller?
I think that's something the commission has to discuss. I'm just asking.
No
a question.
problem. I'd rather get clarification so that I could just get on with the builder, and if you guys are happy with it, I'm sure we'll answer it.
This is discussion.
Sure.
Not yet a absolute.
Absolutely.
I've got a question for our planning consultant, Joe Tangiri. If I'm reading correctly, that in the side yard, a SLU accessory building, it cannot exceed the ground floor square footage of the principal building.
That's right.
In the tax record I'm seeing, it shows 3,124 square feet.
For the principal?
Yes.
Structure.
So it wouldn't be 3,270 allowed. I mean, your request basically falls into two categories.
Okay.
Location and size.
Correct.
In history, for the most part, this planning commission has been in place. These members have been working together for almost 4 years now, some of them far longer than that. But we put a lot of effort into revisiting our maximum allowable size, accessory building sizes for different parcel sizes.
Sure.
So, and of course, your application falls within one of those categories between 5 and 10 acres. So we always need to be very careful what we agree to here
Sure.
doesn't set a precedent that could become the new standard within the township. So we can't force you to do anything. As far as we can go, is we can ask you if you'd be willing to consider changing your request from the current 3,840 square feet to, if I've got it right, Joe, 3,148 square feet?
I think 3,072.
Well, that's the measurements that he was giving, yeah.
Okay.
48 by 64.
But I mean, you'd be allowed up to, we need to confirm for sure that I thought I had it right, tax record was 3,124, so that would be
Yeah.
the maximum. And then, so with you being willing to change your request on your own accord to what's allowed, then what remains is the SLU would apply to strictly the location of the building. I did drive up your driveway yesterday. I got to compliment you. It looks like you've done a very nice job with your home. And, you got rolling hills out there. Your land balancing looks great. And for sure, you've got a big drop off in the rear yard. I mean, logical location is on the west side of your property.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, I will drop the barn size down to below 3,100, to be a 64 by 48, and that's 3,072 square feet.
Any other questions for the applicant before I ask Joe to give us a rundown? Because I do have a question for Joe, but any other questions for Mr. Martin? Hold tight for a second.
Sure.
Joe, when I read this, though, I thought there was something here that said it doesn't require a side yard variance. In number 1, the building is located in the exterior side yard but is not located in the required side yard, and therefore the location does not require special land use approval. I was confused by that.
Keep in mind, I had a fever when I wrote this letter. So,
Okay.
I was extremely sick last week, so yeah, an accessory building can be located in the non-required side or with special land use approval. I think I may have,
That's just a typo?
yeah.
Okay.
I think that's just a mistake. But if he's lowering the size of it, he wouldn't need the size special land use. He'd just need it for the location in the non-required side yard.
Okay. So Joe, do you want to just run us through then any other highlights in your write-up regarding the request?
With the size changed, a lot of the comments that are in here no longer apply.
Okay.
The main thing is that the side lot line that we're looking at here in terms of where the building is located, the required setback would be 75 feet, and he's 408 feet from that side setback line. There's a fair amount of natural vegetation in there. One of the things that we do typically look at is whether or not to require any screening.
Yeah, it looks pretty covered from the
In
road.
this case, it looks pretty covered, yeah. The other thing was that we needed confirmation on the building height, that it's less than 29 feet.
I talked to the builder to ask him for like elevations. He said that it won't exceed the 29 feet. I believe he said it was 26-ish, I think. 16-foot ceilings with the pitch, I think it comes out to be 25, 26 foot. I don't have actual elevations of the drawing because we weren't sure on the size yet.
Yep.
So being that we're shrinking it, it's just your standard pole barn build. Nothing too fancy with the top.
Yeah, if it's 26 feet, then that would be compliant.
Yeah.
And I know, anything else, Joe, before we?
No, I don't think so, no.
Yes, I think the only other thing was section 8, which is around, because it's in the side yard, typically we want to better understand how it will match the home.
Mm-hmm.
I know you don't have elevation pictures or anything like that, but can you describe the look of this?
Yeah, I can describe the look of it. So the house, the way my house sits, it sits east and west and facing to the north. The front and the back faces to the south. Rectangular shape. So the barn's going to sit the same rectangular shape. The garage doors will face the north, the same as my current house garage doors. The back will be on the south, and then the two peaks will be on the east and the west, the same as my house peaks are. So it's gonna just basically just flow correctly like that, and then it's going to have a black border up 4 or 5 feet with wainscot. Then it's going to have white siding with the board and batten. My house is board and batten with black brick, so it's going to be black pole barn siding with the wainscot, and then there'll be board and batten style metal siding. Then the west side will have a lean-to with black metal roofing, and the roof will be metal. The roof will be black also, so it'll break it up, and the windows will be black, doors will be black. It's just gonna be matched the same color scheme.
Okay.
Question for you, you gonna include any windows?
There will be, I plan on adding in two windows out facing the east side to look at the house, and then a faux window to kind of break the peak up a little bit.
It makes them look more like a carriage house than a storage building.
Yeah, it's gonna have some windows on it. Yep. I don't want to tell you exactly where they're going to be yet, but yeah, I mean their plan is 4, and then some additional ones to break the peaks up a little bit because it is a lot of white.
I got a question for Joe. You mentioned shed roof, lean-to shed roof. Do those count towards the square footage?
Yeah, anything that's covered by roof or roof eave would.
Okay, so square footage. So if it's not enclosed, it just has a roof over it. We're going to count that as square footage too.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so the total structure size we want under 3,100 square feet.
Yeah.
And
3144 was that?
30.
48.
Yeah.
3124 is what I have.
That would be my house. That would be if you don't count my bonus room. Yeah, so I guess it's the first floor. I have a full walkout, so we're not counting that. First floor, then the bonus room above the garage is 400 square feet, so 3,100 and so square feet.
It's ground floor living space.
Yeah, yep. So I can, I mean, if we're not counting my bonus room, then we'll go ahead and keep it below that.
Okay.
So just if it has an overhang though, correct? It's just
Correct.
just the
Anything
overhang.
covered.
Okay.
You got to count it.
Yep.
So we're at the point where this is public hearing for.
We need to open the public hearing.
Oh, okay, all right.
So just maybe have a seat in the front for just a second. We're going to open the public hearing in case anybody else is here to speak on this.
Sure.
So
No problem.
don't go too far.
I gotta come back up here.
We may or may not need you, so don't go too far. Make a motion to open the public hearing at 6:51 PM.
Second.
Motion by Vincent, second by Boyce. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Public hearing is now open. So anybody that's here to speak on this topic, please step forward to the podium, state your name and address, and address the commissioners.
I suggest that we enter the letter received from Joe Malka in favor of with no objections to the outbuilding into the record.
I agree. We'll make a motion to close the public hearing at 6:52 PM.
Second?
Seconded by Barnett. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. Motion carries. Back to the commissioners. You've heard the information. The applicant has offered to update the accessory building square footage size to be no greater than the footprint of the principal residence at 3124. So what's before us is a SLU for a side yard accessory building,
I'd like to
Non-required
ask the
side yard.
applicant.
non-required side
I
yard.
would note that it's non-required.
Can I ask you a question, please? Can you explain to us the wanting to put that in the non-required side yard rather than the rear?
The question is why I want to use the side yard, not the backyard. Due to the topography hardship behind me, it's quite the elevation changes, rolling hills. There are a lot of mature trees behind me. Just to remove those would be, a shame when I have great, open land to the west. And it's quite flat and level with my house, and it would look good pulling in the way my driveway is, and I would prefer to put it there, please.
You have a walkout, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because to me, it looks almost like a bowl.
Yeah,
House.
it is a bowl.
It's like you drive up the driveway, and there's like a berm, looks like you did some land balancing there, brought it up, but,
Yeah, I can explain that. I kept the backyard the land was naturally rolling when I bought it. We put our house on it was a U-shaped bowl. We put the house there with the walkout at the lowest level. It's about 12 feet drop. And there's two rolling hills that are grassed. And then they roll down towards, one rolls to Dequindre, the other rolls to the east. And they drop off about 12, 15 feet, roll towards Dequindre, all mature trees. So to use that particular area, the drainage would be difficult to manage for that barn. The driveway use would really, have to remove quite a few large trees. It just makes it a little more difficult. It really does.
Any other questions or comments, or does anyone like to make a motion?
hearing no comments. If that's true, everybody satisfied? I have a motion ready. I'd like to submit a motion recommending conditional approval for a special land use accessory building submitted by James Martin Jr. at 77622 Pearl Drive, Bruce Township, parcel number 14, 0128-400-015. This recommendation motion to the Bruce Township Board is for placement of the new construction accessory building in the side yard, not front yard, and is conditional on the applicant voluntarily modifying his application from 3,840 square feet to a maximum size of 3,124 square feet. That is the permitted accessory building maximum size for lot sizes 10 acres to less than 15 acres as further defined within the Bruce Township Ordinance 161, Section 5.1, accessory buildings. I can send that to you, Dana, so you don't.
Do we need to say why? Because of the topography?
Yeah, you open to a couple.
And the, somehow we'll weave it in. Due to recognizing that there is a topography hardship at the property that I personally interviewed.
You want to consider adding to your motion that the applicant has offered to match the color of the house with the black lower and upper white finish?
Yeah. So applicants agreed to build with matching materials that are in harmony with his principal residence.
I'm not sure he's matching. Are you matching materials of the house or color?
Color.
Not material.
Okay.
Color.
So you're going to amend yours to color, not material.
Okay. Colors. Yeah.
Rick, are you also open to another suggestion around
Sure.
tree preservation that the applicant has spoken to, that by putting it on the side yard, it would preserve
Sure.
existing trees?
Provide your own words. I'm receptive to including. We don't have a second on it, so we're in a state of flux here,
Part of
right?
the reasoning.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. So in addition to the topography, I think due to the tree preservation by located in the side yard.
Anything else?
Hearing none, we need a second.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Hagelstein, seconded by Tremblay.
Say anything about the adequacy of the existing natural vegetation for screening? Would that be something to include in the motion, you think? Because we often do talk about screening when we're talking about this type of location.
We haven't voted on it yet, so we can, if you're open to amending the motion still. we can-
Someone's going to have to come up with the creative wording for it, though.
Where would this be visible from?
Primarily DeQuinder, I think. Correct.
Yeah, if you didn't have a bunch of trees and vegetation there, it would probably be visible from DeQuinder, but because there's so much vegetation there, it really won't be.
You could make a condition on maintaining the current vegetation preservation.
Where
To
the
screen the building from
Or the rear yard, right? It's rear yard?
well, this is side yard.
Side.
Yeah, this is mostly in the side yard, side and front.
Can we include anything that if, the vegetation were to either die on its own accord or be removed manually, that it would be the
I think if you say to preserve.
Yeah, you want to maintain. If something happens there, then you put something in its place.
Preserve it.
Okay.
Dan, did you catch that as a condition?
Preserve and maintain the natural vegetation.
Yeah, as a visual buffer.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the base motion, then you've got the add-in stuff, right? Okay, thank you.
Got a motion
I'll second.
by
his motion
Hagelstein,
as-
seconded by Tremblay with the edits. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Sure. Camp,
Yes.
Lees,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Tremblay,
Yes.
Hagelstein,
Yes,
Cupids,
Yes.
Yes. Motion passes. So this means it's going to go to the board
Okay,
2 weeks from today, they'll have the final say. We just make a recommendation to them.
okay,
So that's when you would get the final notice of either approval or denial. But typically, our recommendation carries some good weight.
sure. Will that come via mail or a phone call or email, or do I have to come back in 2 weeks?
It would be best if you were here.
Okay, so,
Same place, same time.
okay, so 2 weeks, same place, same time?
Yep.
Okay, I'll see you guys
Thank you
then.
so much.
Thank you, have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item 7 is complete. Now we move on to 8, which is the reviews, site plan review for the Ford Motor Battery Test Facility. Right here.
Evening, Commissioners. Chris Small with Ford Motor Company, located at 17,000 Rotunda, Dearborn. Here to request the final site plan review and approval for the battery test lab facility that we're proposing at the Ford Michigan Proving Grounds, located off of Fisher Road.
Do we go right to you, Joe?
Sure.
Yeah, let's go to Joe.
All right, so yes. You're all familiar with the Ford Proving Grounds, very large active facility. They are proposing a new kind of sub-facility consisting of 2 buildings, a 28,638 square foot testing building, and then a 2,904 square foot suspect battery storage building. Facility is going to be served by a driveway that already provides access to other facilities on the site, and they're going to extend that to provide additional parking areas, maneuvering areas, and trash receptacle area around the building that's being proposed. So they're kind of connect to one part of the existing drive and then reconnect to another part of the existing drive on the other side of the sub-site. The surrounding zoning is, well, it's technically RS, but it's all this site. It's all surrounded by other parts of the Ford Proving Grounds. And, you know, when you look further afield to the edge of the Ford Proving Grounds, there are some different zoning there, and I've outlined that in the letter, but really, it's surrounded by other parts of the Proving Grounds. Just looking at the dimensional standards, to say the least, the setbacks are met. The building height actually is 30 feet, 2 stories in this district. I saw 32 on the plans, so that was actually over. This building is quite a bit further from the front lot line than the 200 feet that would typically require our, you know, appearance standards to kick in. Looked at required off-street parking. I found that the facility itself requires 57 parking spaces under our ordinance. There are 13 new spaces being provided. One thing I did note is that there's like a big parking lot right next to this. So as far as that's concerned, I think we should discuss with the applicant exactly where the people in this facility are coming from. Are some of them already on site? Is there going to be sharing of that facility for anybody who needs to come to this building? It may just be that there's plenty of parking here to cover all the uses that are going on without adding an excessive amount of new. All street loading requirements are met. Looked at parking lot landscaping. 1 tree per 6 parking spaces is usually required, so that would be 2 trees. Facility isn't visible from any direction by people located outside the proving grounds, so the green belts, walls, and berms is really not relevant here. They're not proposing outdoor storage. They have a trash area on the plan. They didn't note any kind of enclosure or anything. We do have a standard for that. Same with the photometric plan. We didn't see any lighting data. And then otherwise, we have some standards for engineering research, and they do meet all those standards. In the case of E, the performance standards, those have to be met in perpetuity by any site that is developed in the township. Any questions for me on the letter?
Yeah, given that these are batteries, are there any hazmat issues that we need to be concerned about?
That is something that we should discuss with the applicant. What kind of materials are we talking about? Particularly the suspect battery storage building, I think is the one that probably needs some discussion.
Can you talk to that issue?
Absolutely. You ready to talk about it now?
Yes, please.
All right. So the facility itself is part of our future of automation, right? Everything is switching to battery electric and battery electric propulsion. This site is actually going to be responsible for doing the regulatory testing that is pushed upon us by the agencies at Bay. The facility itself will have a variety of sizes of battery types. We refer to those as both packs and arrays. And what that means is how many various cells are part of a battery system. So when you have a battery electric vehicle, it's not just a single battery, it is an array of batteries. So within the facility, the battery testing will be conducted. That's actually one of the drivers for the height restriction that we're discussing, and happy to address that next. We are meeting all EPA requirements and air emission requirements for this facility. As deemed by the state and by the federal government, we will have fire suppression and containment for this building that will then be collected and properly disposed of through environmental means. So nothing will actually leave the facility without being either scrubbed for purification by air handling units with proper screening, or through containment systems that will then be properly disposed of.
They won't be disposed of on the property at all?
Correct. Everything will be disposed of off-site at regulatory facilities.
Is your fire suppression, is it CO2?
So we have a couple different systems based on the battery system. So the best way to describe the chambers is they are actually designed as a kiln. So what is intended to be conducted and tested and measured here is anything that could cause a battery to ignite is able to then be monitored and observed throughout the remainder of that ignition. So each chamber is actually a building within a building. It is a kiln, and it will have a variety of fire suppression systems, both pre-action and water mist systems.
Is this going to be your North America battery testing center?
We actually have a couple. This is one of them. Yep. Most of this is currently outsourced, and so Ford is looking to bring this in-house with the new regulations that are being proposed. Currently, the outsourcing is done in both Wisconsin and Texas, so Ford is actually proud to bring this home to Michigan as part of our in-house work.
Okay. You said for fire suppression that water only is planned currently?
Correct. Right now, it's a water mist system for the actual suppression of the room. There is a few new technologies being proposed out there that do meet regulatory requirements for the actual cell, both saltwater submersion as well as encasement chamber. So once a battery is actually under a suspected state, we monitor it. If temperatures elevate, we have the ability to either enclose it within a chamber or fully submerge it. The problem right now is once you fully submerge a battery in a saltwater containment system, you have no way of actually tracking what the next step is. It is completely undetectable, unusable at that point in time, rendered completely useless and unable to actually investigate and monitor.
What I'm getting at is understanding that lithium ion isn't the only type of battery being used, but we know that lithium-ion batteries are highly reactive to water. So, on the other hand, you've got like a kiln type arrangement, so
correct.
You're relying on basically the oxygen being used up.
Yeah, actually, there's different technologies in place to be able to suppress. We can actually smother, we can submerge, and we can douse. So the fire suppression system actually is intended to protect the structure and not put the battery itself out. If we are going to put the battery itself out, we will look at doing either a blanketed cover or a submersion within a tank.
Okay. Now use of water, I assume that, I know Ford's very comprehensive, that you're going to have mitigation in place to prevent that, I'll call it contaminated water from leaving the facility. Is that correct?
Yeah, actually the each chamber is actually designed with a base containment system that is able to handle the discharge rate of the water and collect it in that area and then be pumped to a separate tank that would then be removed off-site and properly treated. So no water will actually leave the facility either via ground spillage or out of doors. It's all pitched down to retention containment chambers below each test cell.
Okay. I did some high-level reading, and, that's how I came up with the carbon dioxide fire suppression. That was one comment, and they said, fire, and suppression and explosion is a concern, and then buildup of fumes with, to mitigate that, automated monitoring of fume, and I assume you've got a sophisticated ventilation system plan.
Correct.
Now, is the storage facility to be ventilated as well as part of your,
Yeah, they're actually separate ventilation systems for each facility based on what's happening. So one is a secure and monitor facility, and so the storage facility will both have new and suspect batteries in it, separated by firewall separation, and then have full fire suppression and mechanical venting of it.
and it's got monitoring
Correct.
also within
Yes.
it? Now, that storage building is not very large, but do you plan just to store let's say, fully built up batteries, like buck-sized batteries, or are you plan to do like pallet rack storage?
Yeah, so there'll actually be storage racks, shelves within that. We are limited based on quantity that we can bring through the facility based on federal regulations. And those batteries actually come out of our Allen Park site. So they will be doing, best way to describe it is almost like a just-in-time delivery system. So batteries will be stored in the facility for a short time, brought into a small prep area as shown on the plans, prepped for the test, and then will be monitored until we can release them based on the regulatory requirements of so many days without any heat exposure or heat increase.
Okay, so where I'm going at with this is that for batteries that have already been tested, I mean, there's a storage facility intended to be a short-term test facility, whereas, let's say, like within 30, 60, or 90 days, those batteries that are tested, you've gathered the data from them, there's no need to further store them on site, that you have a defined plan in place to move those batteries to a more appropriate final storage location?
Yeah, the storage length is driven by the actual battery itself. So it has to pass so many days without any sort of heat adjustment or change before we can actually remove the battery and transport. Once it meets that regulatory requirement, then we will be removing all the batteries off-site. That window can be anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months. I mean, it's relatively short-term. We're not looking at storing batteries here for years on end after testing. There's no requirement for us to do that. But it is a set state before it can be able to be handled and maneuvered. Obviously, it has to be transported on a road, so they want to make sure it's in a safe state before it leaves the site.
Okay, I'm a retired engineer from GM, so that's why I'm coming up with a bunch of questions here. I know Ford has a great reputation, and I respect them, and my takeaway from being an engineer is that, human beings are imperfect. So to accept perfection from imperfect beings is an unrealistic expectation. Vehicle electrification, it's been around for quite some time, but with the current administration, as we know, there's a big push on it. So that's going to accelerate what you're doing out there. So as the activity increases, there's higher risk involved. We never know what could happen, so I'm just trying to ask some pointed questions. I'm sure that others have got their own, but just trying to think outside the box and trying to do whatever's possible to mitigate a situation. I mean, I like what I'm hearing thus far, but it's really not a but, it's more of an and, that and anything applicable be included. That's kind of wide open. And, for my engineering background, my marching orders were idiot-proof at 300%. So that way, there can be, I'll call it problems. I don't want to say incidents, but issues. And the end result can still be accomplished without consequence. So, and I think we would agree that litigation avoidance is probably about 30% of what you're dealing with, as well as what I did. So that benefits us as a community, as well as, your foresight trying to anticipate what may happen and trying to put plans in place to mitigate it. So, that's what I've got to share. So this is kind of new. I've been doing this job for about 3.5 years. And I think this is the first time I've dealt with a site plan approval without a prior special land use. So it's kind of a rare bird. So
Thanks, sir. Any other questions from the commissioners?
I have a question. You spoke of, I believe, retention chambers for contaminated water,
Correct.
so they're under the facility?
So they are part of the foundational system. So all the floors will be pitched to a central drain, and that below chamber system will actually be able to retain the water.
So is that type of construction, is that something that Eagle has to approve?
It does not, nope.
Okay, the reason I ask is because you got wellhead protection areas running all over the property.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is the design regulated by the EPA?
So EPA will regulate the exhausting of it. They do not regulate the actual dispersion of the water on it. The reason for that is actually the fact that if a vehicle catches fire out on a roadway and is doused with water for fire suppression to put it out, none of that is regulated either. So they actually do not regulate. Ford is actually going above and beyond, both with our fire suppression requirements and our environmental protection requirements to do this. So we don't have any potential for spillage outside of the site.
And that's very concerning because that water goes all over.
From
the wellhead protection areas are quite large.
Absolutely.
The other question is for Joe, and you may not know this. Has the fire chief weighed in on all of this?
Yeah, I asked Mike Philbrook about that today.
I talked with him earlier today, Chief Nakas, and summarizing what he shared is that I asked him what his confidence level was dealing with potential incidents at the site, and the first word that came to his mind was 0. He says, our fire department's small. He says, we've got 15 people, and he said, we're already challenged dealing with, crashes on site at the proving grounds. It takes them sometimes 10 minutes to get back. It's such a large facility, a lot of winding roads back there. But he said, he says, we need to be educated as to how to deal with, and his biggest concern is explosions and secondarily fires. But, how to deal with if an incident were to occur. And he said there are third-party agencies available that advise how to deal with these issues. So, that being said, I'm trying to paraphrase what he said, but, that education, I would hope that would be something that Ford would take on to help educate our fire department to be able to provide the required services if necessary, because I believe Chief Steve Nakas has already communicated prior that he does have concerns.
Yeah, so we actually had a pre-meeting with them and made some revisions to the overall site plan and the building per the initial conversations. We are fully supportive of educating. We have a full corporate fire division that specializes around facility protection to the point that our density for sprinklers in this facility far exceeds what IBC would actually require for this. So we have a ton of lessons learned. We have years of history and experience of dealing with this, and happy to share that out. We have done that with other communities. Our corporate fire department or corporate fire organization within Ford Motor Company has already spoken with the chief in past and has a good working relationship with them, even when they were discussing the potential to look at a new facility. So fully supportive. And again, as we do these facilities, we're building major battery plants in other small town communities right now that have very similar concerns. Okay. So we are working through that on not just a statewide level, but a national level.
Well, again, his confidence today, excuse me for interrupting, was very, very low. So he just recognized, he says, we need to be educated. And he says, including, we may not have the equipment necessary to mitigate, again, an incident. So if additional equipment were required to take care of what may occur out there, is that something that Ford Motor Company would be willing to step up and buy that equipment versus the purchase being from existing tax dollars?
Yeah, I don't know that we can speak to that here. As part of the zoning review, that's a request for funding and donation that far exceeds the ask of the facility. I will state that the facility is being designed properly for it and will have the proper tools and extraction as part of the facility for it. Each test chamber will only have one battery, so the concern of a runaway event with multiple batteries or the potential for explosion is actually alleviated by having a confined test requirement around a single cell or single array.
So let's get back to the site plan review and stick to those parameters for now.
All right.
Henrik. I know there was an open one you said you were going to mention in a second, which was the building height exceeding.
Correct.
You speak to that?
Yep. So the facility itself is two-stage height, right? We have 2 large test chambers and we have 3 smaller test chambers. The 2 large test chambers are the area where the roof would step up, and it's at a 32 foot, so 2 foot above the required limitations in the current ordinance. And the rationale for that is we actually have to do a impact test where a battery is dropped in order to have that test completed. And in order to meet the regulatory requirements, it has to be dropped from a height of 32 feet or higher, 30 feet or higher, which requires the roof line to be elevated in that location. So that's what's driving it. We wouldn't be building it any higher than we need to if we didn't have to. That roof will be a flat roof system with no mechanical units or any screening put on top of it. So we will be looking at just the extension to 32 feet of building facade with no additional equipment roof mounted above that.
Because 32 feet max height, no HVAC, nothing on the roof to extend.
Correct.
Okay. Joe brought up some questions around the parking. Can you speak to kind of how that is going to be?
Yeah, so the facility itself is actually set behind our security perimeter line. And so any employee actually entering the site has to enter through our security checkpoint south of the main building on Fisher Road. And so they would actually have to go through the facility and walk over to the building. So from a parking adjacent to the facility, it really doesn't make much sense for us to add additional parking there. We currently have 356 spaces on site right in the near adjacency to this building, not including the 13 being proposed.
How many did you say? 356?
356, yep. And 186 of those are in the main employee lot just outside of the building within less than a 2-minute walk to the facility. That is where we would actually predominantly be having the employees park. A few will be able to park directly adjacent to the building based on testing operations. Mainly what we would see there is any sort of vehicle charging outside. So we will have 3 level 2 chargers on that site for prototype or test vehicles. But the predominant parking for employees will actually be outside of that secure perimeter in that main employee lot.
Okay. You got anything, Mike?
I do.
Go for it.
This is one for Joe. Protocol, 32 feet is required what they need. 30 is our standard. Can we approve 32 here? Or does it have to go to ZBA, or what's the protocol?
I mean, usually to exceed the height, you're looking at a variance. Just so that we can understand the extent of the building that exceeds the permitted height. It's the 3 specific chambers.
2 chambers, the 2 large chambers, correct.
Okay, so there's 2 large chambers. Those exceed the height. Let's see if I can just determine where those are.
And what's difficult on this site is, as all you commissioners know, is the facility itself doesn't really fall within a rural suburban zoning classification anyways, right? We're dealing with a historic special land use granted pre the zoning of the site. So it gets very difficult for us to think about the type of applications that would actually fall within the constructability of an RS district.
Is it lab 1 and 2 that are the tall ones, or is it different ones?
It is lab 1 and 2.
Lab 1 and 2, okay.
So, Joe, the reason I asked the question is that we updated our building height for our industrial district.
We did, yeah.
And because of the special land use granted to this total facility, it's more of an industrial use with the test track and everything.
It is, yeah.
Could you make a logical extension that would be, the 40-foot would be more of the measuring indicator, even though it's zoned RS?
Yeah, I mean, the ordinance doesn't really say that. I mean, it is logical.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the extent of the additional height.
Yeah, my main question is, can we approve the 32 feet?
Right. Yeah, it's a fairly significant portion of the building.
From a common sense standpoint, I don't have an issue with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an issue from a common sense standpoint. It's just from an ordinance standpoint. Have a height limit in the district. There's nothing really in the ordinance that says, well, this is a different type of use.
Because it's a
so-
special land use.
Yeah.
So do they need to go to the ZBA for that?
Yeah, I would think they do.
Can I get clarification as to what we would be requesting? Because we're not asking for a variance to the actual zoning classification of this. So it gets
You're
difficult
asking
because
for-
that would then come back to the plan review and planning commission. So
No, it wouldn't. It would go to a zoning board variance. They approve all variances, whether it's to easements or heights or.
It's just a variance
Yeah.
from the required building.
I think it's a formality more than.
32.
I don't see the ZBA having anything, but I was asking if we could approve it here. And what I'm hearing is we cannot. That particular item.
When does the ZBA meet?
They meet on the last Monday
Usually
of
it's
the
the
month.
last Monday.
So you could probably get in.
which then the concern becomes, is that going to be a public hearing, public comment for the ZBA? Because of the request for the height variance, it would go public comment is my understanding, correct?
Everything for the ZBA is the public hearing.
Personally, I sit on the ZBA too. Personally, I don't see an issue with the ZBA approving this. But I think it's just a requirement that it has to go there.
Yeah.
What's your concern?
Just
Public comment?
timing and public comment. We're, up against regulatory requirements to get these things in and go. And, we've been trying to get this review for a couple months now. So I just want to make sure that we're able to move forward. So I guess our request would be, could we make a conditional improvement on everything here from a site plan so we can continue with permitting and drawings in order to do that conditional upon the ZBA recognition of it?
Let me finish with I just had a few.
Absolutely.
A lot easier than that one. With the existing parking that they have, Joe, I don't see any issues with them adding just 13 new. Sounds like they got plenty.
No, it sounds like they've got plenty of parking to cover the difference.
Trash enclosures. Are there new dumpsters being proposed or not?
So we've shown an area on the north side screened by the building. It's still under discussion on the overall trash and management of the site. We have other locations, so they're still working through right now. Would the trash actually be moved from this facility to another facility? The main trash that we're going to be dealing with is the small office area up front. The rest of that will all be regulated materials that would have to be properly disposed of outside of the building. So those would be in the prep and tear down areas, not stored exterior to the building. So
we do have standards for screening of those. That you have to.
Happy to meet them if we add a facility out there. No concerns with that.
The photometric plan needs to be provided.
So the reason the photometric wasn't provided yet is we were still waiting on the final sign off of the site plan in and of itself. Ford is committed, so we actually only place a 18-foot high max fixture with zero light cutoff. It's a Acuity DSX series. It's our standard. It's dark sky approved. Obviously here we don't have to worry too much about spillage of light, but the light pollution always a concern of ours. And our standard right now is a 1-foot candle per parking area with a 5-foot candle for loading dock area. So all within the standard regulations that you guys have in place. Happy to meet them. The biggest thing was just making sure that we got final comment back from the fire chief who had requested a different drive lane, 2-access approach to this, which we've provided in the site plan design. And once we have sign off, we're happy to provide the foot candles as part of the permitting process.
On point 13, Joe, in yours, topographical data is not provided on the site plan.
So I wanted to obtain clarification on that one. There is topography lines shown on the initial site plan showing where we place this. The area is about a 4-acre site. The area of impact is only less than 2 acres. We actually tried to put it in an area where we could balance cut and fill. We roughly have about 17 feet of grade change across the cross-section of the site. And by placing it where we did, we were able to remain the 3 trees that currently pre-existed on that cleared site and balance that cut and fill as best as possible. So trying to minimize any soil going out or any soil coming in with the placement.
No, I think I was satisfied with that.
Okay. That's all I have. Thank you.
Just curious, how many employees are you going to be adding?
So this facility right now is poised to have about 40 employees, and that's given our current testing requirements that we see, standard straight shift. We're currently evaluating that as things continue, if we're going to have to increase operations to meet new regulatory requirements that will be placed on us. And the nice thing about us coming out here, again, trying to bring this home to Michigan, was that if we ever look to expand this facility, we have the opportunity here. That's a big opportunity of us, a big reason why we looked at this site. It's core to the testing there, so they actually have the ability to expand and take vehicles right off the test track and test them as well in the future. So a lot of synergies that came here, but right now the base is 40 employees.
There'd be 40 new people coming here to work every day.
Yeah, I mean, some of them already come out here. It's similar test engineers. They're not staged out here. So we will have some transient employees going back and forth. So net new out here, probably in the order of magnitude of 20 to 30. But yeah, roughly a 40-person crew out on the site.
Thank you.
So that's 40 incremental to what you already have there.
Correct, yeah, and like I said, some of them are already coming out here based on their other testing requirements, certain days a week, so.
I just want to address something that, Rick, you had brought regarding the fire department. The fire department is not designed to fight every emergency that we have. That's why the county has resources that we count on, and so does some of the surrounding departments. For us to be able to accommodate every fire, we wouldn't be able to afford it. So Steve's comment at zero confidence level is, in my opinion, inappropriate.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from commissioners to the applicant or to Joe regarding this site plan approval? If not, is there a motion to address it?
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with the following contingencies. One is that the applicant obtain zoning board approval for the height variance of 32 feet versus 30. That the trash enclosure meets the standards of section 5.26 of ordinance 161, and that a photometric plan is submitted and reviewed by our planner and approved by our planner. And then with the following notes, that the topographical data, our planner was satisfied with the topographical data provided, and that the parking issue is not an issue given the existing parking for that particular facility.
I'll second it.
Motion by Tremblay, seconded by Can. Dana, would you call the roll, please? Any other discussions before Dana calls the roll? Okay, Dana, call the roll, please.
Barnett,
Yes.
Boyce,
Yes.
Cant,
Yes.
Eggleston,
Yes.
Cupids,
Yes.
Vincent,
Yes.
Tremblay.
Yes.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioners. One final question. Is there the ability to get the recommendation of the Planning Commission to escalate this to the next ZBA meeting, given the request today?
Yeah, I sit on there, and I will be an advocate for your request.
Okay.
And I would suggest that you come too.
Not a problem.
I'll get you the notice, Dana.
Yeah, thank you for the notice, and I'll let
Now, do we have enough time to get them on that?
well, it's up to Joe. I mean, you don't need to provide me anything other than the notice and
That's it, yeah.
What do we
So-
need, 15 days?
15 days.
Yeah.
And do you see a reason why, any reason why we can't get them on?
If we can get a notice, I'd say do it.
Yeah.
So the next meeting will be in this month.
27th.
May 27th.
Does it go to the
Isn't
board in
that
2 weeks, or
Memorial
is that wait until?
The
this-
board does not have to review this.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a site
27th is
plan.
Memorial Day, just so you know.
Oh, the 27th is Memorial Day?
You're right.
Oh, you know what? They probably got a calendar out there. Let me see,
They may have moved it to the Monday before.
probably.
Are you available?
Let me.
Is that going to give us the available?
Let me look it up on our website real quick.
The Monday before is the 20th, so
Yes.
you could still get 15 days.
Yeah.
Cutting it close.
So you better.
Yeah, that's, yeah. I don't know the publication schedules you're dealing with, but.
No, I. Does it say under the 20th, Mike?
I'm trying to find the calendar.
I don't know if you did the 20th or the 28th, but.
We will, we'll do our best to have somebody cover. It may not be me, but we will have somebody represent. I'm supposed to be in Marshall dealing with somebody,
ZBA is Monday, the 20th.
The Marshall.
It says 7 PM on the calendar, but I think it's 6, right?
It's definitely.
6 PM, May 20th. Can we get it noticed in time to have them?
No problem.
I'll see you on May 20th.
Sixth.
Just, there is an application, so talk to me tomorrow if you're able.
I will do so. Thank you, Commissioners.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
All right, that wraps up item 8 on the agenda. Item 9 is communications. Is there any communications?
Where are we at?
Number 9.
Number 9.
communications.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Hearing none, we'll move on to item 10, unfinished business. We already took care of 10A, so 10B is the poultry discussion.
Due to my illness, I did not have time to synthesize the research that I engaged in last week. It was a little bit of a miracle that I managed to get a couple reviews, industrial uses and validity periods turned around. However, I am prepared to discuss the issue. I think that it would be good to do a little bit of policy setting tonight so that we can then kind of move the ball forward. And of course, we did receive a nice little package of research
That was really good. Thank you.
Commissioner Barnett did as well.
Did you get it?
Pardon me?
Did you get it?
When was it sent?
I didn't get any.
Oh, did you not receive a printout of this?
I think it was on your,
Yeah.
Oh, sitting here?
Dana
This thing,
emailed it.
chicken research and considerations
Okay.
by Mandy Barnett.
That's probably.
I think there's good stuff here.
I do too. I mean, it hit I think all the salient points.
Well, it caught the reason that a lot of ordinances that allow chickens in otherwise residential areas do not allow roosters. A lot of them are hen-specific for the reasons that are listed here. Roosters are loud, and if you're going to be allowing chickens in a more residential area, then that's something you need to be considering.
I have a simple question, and I haven't done any root analysis on this, but I always try to find a simple approach that works. And my question is, if we, in our ordinance, defined a chicken as a farm animal, which it doesn't do today, would that alleviate the complaints that the current supervisor is getting? In other words, are the chickens in areas where he's getting the complaints, and if we just defined it as a farm animal, it would not be allowed in those sections?
That probably would be the case in some locations, yeah. I think that particularly where you have subdivisions with,
Covenants.
Yeah, my simple case is,
exactly, yeah.
if you got a
Gotta
cow, you can have a
master
chicken.
things.
But if you don't have a cow, maybe you can't have a chicken.
I think chickens are a little different, though. It's
Oh.
more accessible to people. They like to be able to have their own eggs.
But we are getting nuisance complaints about it, and that's the reason why we're talking about
Yeah,
And I was just-
I'm all for the tightening up of the ordinance, because I'm the one who's got to tell these people something. But it is kind of it's kind of a thing that we're still rural. I mean, we're not the city, and I agree that, when we're down further south end, a little too close to have,
Yeah, I just wondered what it would look like if we just defined it as a farm animal, what that would do.
Well, how,
Because it's already stated somewhere that they're not allowed in certain districts.
Chickens are not, it's,
Farm animals.
fabulous.
but farm animals are defined on where you can have farm animals.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what's the,
And maybe that would be too restrictive, to Mandy's point. I don't know that for a fact. I was just throwing an idea.
Is there a simple solution?
Is there a simple solution that works? If not, then we look at something.
in R1 and R1A, what are the acreage sizes of those again?
R1,
R1 is 2?
Correct? R1H1.
yeah.
And R1B
Is
is
half.
half. So,
And I can attest to the fact that there is emotions on both sides in our recent homeowners association meeting. Right in this room. And prior, it was discussed because someone wanted to raise chickens. 42 homes, 40 homes, somewhere in that area. And one particular person, family, wanted to raise chickens. It came up in the meeting and overwhelming response to say no chickens. I was late, almost late here this evening because I got stopped in my car. Got to see you, from a resident who gave me a good set of words. So it is emotional for a lot of people. At the meeting, the person that wanted to do it was looking for someone to be sympathetic, to talk in their favor, and it never happened. So I have personal experience with it, and in fact, we were told in the homeowners association meeting where they're not allowed to talk about it because there's litigation that's somehow being looked into. And this is probably not the time to discuss it, but there's a lot of reasons to not do it. There's a lot of reasons to do it. But to come in and change or allow into an existing community of 42, 43 people, that you're going to now change it and allow for chickens or some other animal to come in, would have significant financial effect for people who have these homes. That's what I'm hearing from my neighbors, from people in my household. And so I agree with what Mike Gilbrook's recording or messages that we got. He said, I agree with the people who see a change resulting in significant impact to them. And I agree with making sure that we dig into this appropriately. And this is not going to be a quick and easy please everybody. We're not going to please everybody no matter what happens. So.
Right. Well, with respect to any change that we make, whether it is either direction, I think homeowner associations seem to come up with their own rules, which may be more restrictive than any of the ordinances, and I think that would still be in place for those homeowner associations to do that. And to police that. I mean, I think.
It becomes a civil matter for the homeowners
Right.
association.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than an enforcement matter for the township, because the township can't enforce master deeds and covenants.
Right.
For a subdivision. So if you've got a subdivision with rules that exceed the township's rules, it's on the subdivision to enforce those.
Hey,
Yeah,
what-
oh, go ahead.
Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
I was just saying, Mike, you were looking for a simple way of, is there perhaps a simple way? And supposing we did add chickens to the list, I don't see anywhere in here that it limits the number. In other words, you could be an R1A, you could be on an acre, but you could have 40 chickens. I think.
No, you got to have 2 acres for the first animal. So if we have one
Oh,
chicken, you
okay.
got to have 2 acres.
Okay.
You got another one, you got to add another acre. So it makes a lot size requirement, which restricts how many chickens you
So
can have.
by,
People out there that
Yeah.
are not.
That's why I said a simple approach might work.
By the ordinance, because I've been telling them for years.
Yeah.
so,
And then you got to consider, is it too restrictive?
right, so basically, if we were to add chickens to our current ordinance,
I think we have a definition of farm animals in our ordinance, and we can just add chickens to the definition.
exactly. So,
It's just, I don't want to solve the issue today, I just throw it out. as an idea.
right, so
For
basically,
discussion.
based on our ordinance, if you happen to have an acre lot in R1A, you have 1 chicken. You're not going to get a lot of eggs.
It's a pet at that point. Huh?
Kind of, yes. I personally.
You could have a cow.
I personally don't object to modifying what we have or coming up with something specific, as long as we also make it explicit in the ordinance that chickens does not, oh, it's a laying hen, it's not a rooster.
Well, I think I agree with that, and I think to the letter that like Philbrook provided to us, I think regardless of what we decide, I think they have to be contained within homeowners' property. I think what's described here is like they're just roaming around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's
And-
one of the things that I tell anybody that calls me and asks about it, even though it's not written, that is a requirement. I advise against roosters, number one, and that they can contain, no free range, and contain
Right.
in a good enclosure. And I know we've gotten a few recently, that's just because there's more people here now, but for a long time that sufficed.
Well, part of the reason people moving out here is so that they can have chickens. If you live in south of here in one of the townships or cities, and you're not allowed to, so you move out here in the country, now you're gonna put a restriction. And if you deem them a farm animal, and it says you can have 1 cow, does that mean you can only have 1 chicken? Which doesn't make sense, because like in this keeping of animals here, it says you can have 2 cows, but you can have 10 chickens based on the size of your property. So to categorize them all as farm animals and make them all equal, that's not right either.
I agree.
But I think,
So maybe we need to look at limiting the number based on property size.
Yeah.
I think that's a challenge though, like,
And stating that they have to be enclosed or something.
Yeah.
So that you don't get the nuisance thing that's
Does
existing.
anybody here have chickens close to them?
I do.
Well, I have chickens ourselves. So,
You have what?
we have chickens. But we live on 10 acres and they're in a pen, right? They don't bother anybody.
Right, directly.
So you're not one of the things that we're concerned about?
You're welcome to take them away.
Or just let your cats in the
Don't
back.
tell
I need to talk to the bride?
Yeah. We're not recording this, right?
I can give a different take on it. Directly behind where we are, there's probably about an acre lot. It's quite big. There's a little chicken coop in there, but the chicken's free range. I forgot to say, the lot is fenced, or standard fence. You know, what are they, 4 feet high? The chicken's free range back there. We haven't seen them on our side of the lot because we're a couple acres away because our area is so big. But I mean, Mandy's information was educational because it does indicate how high they can go if they choose to. So does a proper pen mean something that's also screened on the top? What does it mean?
Well, you want to screen them on the top so they don't get eaten by other animals.
A lot of chicken coops are screened on the top specifically for that reason. They're actually vulnerable to birds of prey if they're out.
And foxes.
Well, yeah, of course, some of the more expected predators, but people don't tend to think of the owls and eagles and things that can get them. That is often done just, by the owner as a matter of keeping the birds protected. You might be able to go over a 6-foot fence, but they can't go through a roof. So, and then that may be a little bit a matter of kind of the context of the, if you are in a area with smaller lots, that's probably something you're going to want. 10 acres, it's probably a little less consequential.
Joe, have you seen ordinances that specifically address chickens in some of the other surrounding communities?
Yeah, there's a few. Actually, even Clawson has one. There's quite a few of these ordinances now around. I did start gathering some, and
I think we have issues because our ordinance is kind of loose with respect to chicken.
Sure.
This list that Dana gave us the last time does have dozens of communities that have some ordinance.
Mandy, is this an actual example of a municipality ordinance?
No.
No, okay.
But when you look at this sheet,
It's all cities.
yeah, we don't compare it to these places. So we can look at what Clawson has, but it's not really going to apply here because we're rural.
Well, but I think that's the challenge, is we're rural in some areas, but we're not in others. Like, I think having chickens in Cloverfield Village is totally different than having chickens in R1S.
But is that when we would rely on the HOAs to have their own rules for subdivisions?
Not every subdivision has HOAs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to basically be looking at the amount of property that people have and
Size of property.
trying to make, kind of a tiered system based on that. There may be a threshold below which you just don't have them.
Right.
And then there's a threshold above which you start to be able to have them.
That's what I was going to comment when you said people move out here to have chickens. I think that's fine, but I think we have to be careful, like, if they're moving out here in a subdivision that's just as small as the subdivision they came from, I don't know that
No.
should qualify as.
Not at all. No, not just because it's Bruce Township.
Yeah.
Like, I moved out here, we would have chickens, but we moved into Bruce Meadows and you can't have chickens, so we don't have chickens.
Sure.
If I had 2 acres someplace, I would have 5 to 10 chickens probably. But I happen to buy in a place which doesn't allow them, so I abide by the rules.
My prior experience, former neighbor had 6 hens. Had a coop behind his accessory building, and, I'm on 2 acres, the lots are pretty much square. So, he'd let the chickens out, because I was surprised how affectionate they were. They're like dogs, roosters, and they, but they just love being out. But I think any less than 2 acres, they would have been in my yard all the time. But that amount of property, they'd be over in my yard every once in a while, but I mean, probably like 2% of the couple of years they were there. So, but that being said, I'm thinking 2 acres may be a good threshold.
But even that, if you had 1 acre and you had chickens and they were in your neighbor's yard, then that would be your problem because you're not maintaining your animals.
Well, I think you got to have an enclosure.
Right, well, exactly.
Not just an acreage.
You know, the same thing with your dog, if it wanders into somebody's yard and does damage, or you would be held responsible for it.
Well, the difference being is if we've got,
But if you got a large enough piece of property, you may not, I mean, they may be free ranging outside of their,
Yeah.
and then come back in the pen at night.
but the major difference is we got as ordinance, we've got enforcement versus civil matter. It immediately becomes, pull your wallet out, and, you know, you're not the perpetrator. It becomes very expensive. So,
So where do we want to go?
Does everyone have a chance to read these?
So I think we agreed that the very simple approach is not going to work, but I think we need to look at, I think we need to look at a few things, if I can summarize. How many chickens you're allowed based on the size of the property, right? Enclosure requirements. Something about roosters. You know, like, I think.
I've
you
seen a
gotta
lot
have
of.
a large piece of property if you want to roost,
Yeah,
otherwise you're going
they
to
are
disrupt.
typically not permitted, smaller.
Yeah, right. And I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything, we give some bullet points for Joe. And Mandy, you probably, maybe more knowledgeable. I know you're probably more knowledgeable.
Right, so if we're going to make an ordinance, I want animal welfare to also be considered.
What's that?
Animal welfare, I think, should also be considered. You
Okay.
can't have a 10-foot coop and put 50 chickens in there.
Yeah.
There's space requirements,
Yep.
there's roosting requirements.
Yeah, I knew somebody who had a coop, but theirs was not very humane.
Yeah, and they should have an outdoor run as well, which, the example zoning
Is
ordinance.
that
I
something
put
we can
there-
do, can we do that in our ordinances, regulate that? Okay.
so it'd be like square footage
Go
per
ahead.
chicken?
Yeah, so if you look at the example zoning ordinance that I put in there, under housing and space requirements, it goes over all of that.
Heated, air
Yep.
conditioning.
So it talks about the square footage of indoor space and outdoor space, roosting and nesting facilities, ventilation. It sums it up.
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, you know, we're talking about chickens that are being kept for people's personal, you know.
Right.
And when you get into the commercial farming realm of things, then the generally accepted agricultural management practices take over, and you're kind of in different territory. But, you know, we're able to regulate keeping of animals, you know, outside of that, so it's kind of the lens that we're
Is
looking at
there
this through.
any right to farm connection to any of this?
Not generally speaking. A lot of people like to kind of
They use
yell
liberal-
right to farm because
Okay.
they've got, you know, an animal on their property, but that's not really how it works.
Okay.
Right to farm is this is just kind of, this is the thing, is that right to farm is an affirmative defense for farms against nuisance complaints if they're operating in accordance with the generally accepted agricultural management practices. The only adjudicating body that can determine whether or not it is indeed a commercial farm and it's operating in accordance with the GAMPs is the Michigan Department of Agriculture and Rural Development. They are the final arbiter of that question. And if you've got some animals on your property for personal use, there's a pretty good chance you are not an MDARD certified farm and you're not going to.
Right, and it's not commercial.
Exactly. You're not going to be covered by right to farm just because you've got a couple chickens on your property.
Okay. All right, I agree with the next steps that Mike has proposed, establishing some tiers based on property size, enclosure requirements, rooster allowability, and animal welfare requirements for Mandy's addition. Anything
Yeah.
else we want to add? And so next steps, Joe, is this something you would put together some initial framework on?
Yeah, and of course,
Well, Mandy's stuff has got
Mandy's
some good
done some
framework to start.
work already here that certainly, some of that is pretty relevant.
Yeah.
Kind of
Just take credit for her work.
never. But,
Glad it's helpful.
yeah, I mean, certainly there's plenty to work with here, so I think we can kind of put together a basic framework for next time and then kind of go from there, how we feel about what we've come up with and where we want to take it.
All right. That sounds great. Mandy, thank you for putting that together.
Yeah,
Very
nice
helpful.
job.
Yes, appreciate it.
Moving on to 10C, reviewing the industrial district allowable and special land uses.
Right, so this is basically a cleaned up version based on the discussion we had last time. Basically thought it'd be nice to see again in something like a final version. And then if we're comfortable with that, we could set up a public hearing. So if there are any questions or comments, happy to address them. Otherwise, this is where we landed last time. And really, we're just kind of taking one look at it before we decide to set a hearing and move forward with.
So Joe, I have a comment on page 4 at the table. We had this discussion last month to not change it. We finalized Amendment 5 for the conditional rezoning for that property. We actually took our existing permitted special land uses and included it as part of the agreement.
Gotcha.
So we can do whatever we want to it now.
Oh, okay.
So
All
we
right.
can make this industrial light,
Oh, okay. All right.
because we actually have to find what they can do with it.
Okay.
Joe, did you have a chance to look at how much, I think said you were going to go and relook at how complicated it would be to change the acronym?
Oh, in terms of
M1 to L1,
M1 to L1,
or LI.
or LI1 rather. Not especially complicated. It probably affects about 11 spots in the ordinance to do
That's
that.
not very many.
It's not, and some of them are the same, where we've got removed reference to PI district. A lot of them overlap with the ones that are already called out in here. So if we do want to go in that LI1 versus M1 direction, there's not really any kind of practical hurdle to doing that, I don't think. So it's a matter of making the call. If you want to go to LI1, we can do that. If you want to keep it as M1, we can do that too.
Would those changes have to be made on the zoning map then?
It would just be a matter of changing the label.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you want to do?
I think we should change it, just to keep it consistent with the other zoning.
I agree.
Okay. So based on those two changes, the LI1 and going back to the industrial light in that table, is everything else good? And then if so, do we do a public hearing? Public hearing for the next meeting.
And this relates to what might be a public hearing. Did you determine whether or not we have to have a public hearing if we're eliminating the PI district?
Yes, insofar as we are amending the zoning ordinance, yes.
So is that, would that be the same public hearing at which we're?
It is, yeah, it's the same
So it
public
would be
hearing.
all together?
Yep, yeah, the PI district and the IRO district are being combined and renamed IRO. So that's, as far as the change to the map is concerned, we have a couple things changing names essentially on the map.
All right, anybody would like to make a motion for public hearing?
I have a question, as always. We added verbiage to both of our new districts, and I believe it is new language, that says use or production of hazardous materials, waste, or byproducts is not permitted. How does that square with what the Ford is doing, which, and they're essentially operating as industrial, even though they're within the RS zoning?
Yeah, it does more or less prohibit, what they're looking at doing. Of course, they're not in these districts, but yeah, that kind of production of hazardous material, the way we've got this worded, it's not permitted. So I guess it's something to consider. Are we okay with that going forward? And of course, it says it in the LI1, it's going to be LI1 now, and in the other district. And we added it to the LI1 to mirror the other district.
Do we have anything else like Ford, which is in that special provision of the RS?
No, Ford's Proving Grounds is the only thing.
Right. I mean, it's massive.
It's like 6 square miles, yeah.
To the township.
Correct. So I don't know, I mean, maybe that is a reason for maintaining the limitation everywhere else, is just because of the virtual size difference. I don't know.
I say we leave it in.
Oh, I wouldn't want to take it out. I'm just asking us to, I'd leave it in to me because,
I mean, other regulatory agencies are going to impact what they're doing.
correct. And they're the only one, and they're a massive piece of property, as you say.
And we may, in the future, come across something that may prompt us to relook at it. But for now, I think we should leave it in.
I do too.
I mean, I do think that if you had a facility that was producing a small amount of something that could possibly fall into that category, but it was being taken off-site after production or something, we can probably work with that.
Yeah, but Ford, they're going to have things there for a maximum of 2 months.
Yeah.
Once the testing is concluded and all the data's been submitted, they remove those things off-site.
Right, but
They also close the water and ship
Correct.
that off-site, so I mean.
Well, does that warrant adding that language to this sentence? I think we're saying, like, to Joe's point, if they are producing some, let's call it a byproduct, I think, based on what we just heard from Ford, so long as it's remediated properly and disposed of properly in accordance with the laws, I mean, are we okay with that?
I think accidents happen. Even what Ford is doing, what if there's a leak in their collection chamber and it seeps into the water? They're not going to be testing for it. We wouldn't find out for years until people start getting sick. So I think we leave it.
I think we leave it as is and let a future, something else come up, force us to look at it. So, did someone do the public hearing motion?
They did not.
All right, I'll make a motion to set a public hearing for the June, what is the date in June? Or whatever, the regular June Planning Commission
June
meeting
5th.
on the industrial uses, updates to the ordinance per the discussion we had today, which is changing that one table
To light
in the
industrial.
L1I, yeah, to leave industrial light, and then to change the name from N1 to LI1, the acronym.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion by Tremblay, seconded by Boyce. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Kent,
Yes.
Eggleston,
Yes.
Cupits,
Yes?
Yes.
Sorry, what did you say?
Vincent,
I didn't hear it. Yeah, yes.
Tremblay,
Yes.
Barnett.
Yes.
Motion carries. All right, item 10D, 5G, ongoing discussion. Any updates on 5G?
No, not tonight.
No updates tonight. Moving on to 10E, agribusiness and agritourism discussion. I believe you have an update for us,
Yeah.
Anne Marie.
I would say the subcommittee's next steps are about 60% complete, and I know Joe was off last week ill, so we're just awaiting his input on the applicability of the GAMPs to certain activities.
Yep.
We gave him something to work with, and he's going to render his opinion.
I've got that open.
And
so.
then the subcommittee can meet. Hopefully that will be within maybe next week.
Okay.
Just for a point of reference, I don't know if you were going to mention it, but our surrounding communities are addressing this issue.
Are they really?
You want to talk about it? You probably know more
No,
about
I
it.
don't. I don't know about it at all.
Armada. The changes that are being done in Armada.
They're not no, they're approving more.
Yeah,
Yes, they have, yes, thank you.
that's what I meant.
I thought you meant they were changing their ordinance. Armada is one of the ones that has a very complex ordinance, and our little subcommittee looked at it a little bit. In addition to having a similar structure to what we do and allowing special land uses for things outside of, what's allowed under law, the GAMPs. They also have what they are calling an overlay district, where it's like overlaid on agricultural properties. And their BS&A records online are, you have to pay a fee to use them. But I suspect that in the overlay districts, they are probably changing, I would guess, the tax structure so that in fact, they're not just being taxed as a farm and are probably being taxed as a commercial property. That's strictly a guess on my part. But they also have a lot of parameters. What was recently done is there is a farm on Romeo Plank, just about, I think would be between 33 and 34 Mile Road on the right-hand side.
Miller's.
And
Miller's.
Miller's, yes. And they, in one meeting, they both approved, I think it was a rezoning, because I think they were in their residential district. They rezoned them to agricultural, and then they also approved or recommended approval for them to be within this agricultural overlay district. I think I've got it pretty close. Yeah, I mean, it was one meeting. And they had a lengthy discussion, believe me. They and their planner went through quite a bit, but no comebacks. It got approved by their board 2 weeks later. And I understand this is just a little grapevine information, but it is the property, we talked about this, at the corner of 32 and Romeo Plank. That was one of the Van Hootie farms. I understand that the Frontier Town people bought that, and they're really expanding it. And I understand something similar is coming on that. So Yes, Mike is right. They didn't change their ordinance, but they have been approving more.
They're moving in a forward direction, accepting,
Yes,
with parameters.
yeah. They also have, and it's apparently been pending for some time. I hope I'm not misstating this, but there's an old farmhouse that would be just beyond to the east on the north side of where the airport is. And that is going to be a barn venue. So, yes, they are moving forward.
It's becoming more popular too with the public.
Yeah.
Wonder at what point it's going to reach market saturation.
Sometime it will.
I mean, how many wedding venues and event centers can you have? I mean, only so much commerce.
It's just a data point for us to know that our
Yeah.
surrounding communities are,
you know.
And I don't know.
most notably Washington.
I don't know if this barn thing is going to be just limited to weddings, which might be, once every couple of weeks, one night, or if it's going to be heavily expanded, for instance, like some of the events that you're seeing down there at Big Red's. I really don't know.
Well, Big Res hasn't started yet. I mean, they're still under construction, so everything they're doing that I'm aware of right now is internal. So all quiet on the Big Red front.
Thanks, Rick. All right, thank you, Anne-Marie. We look forward to the final update soon. Moving on to 10F, approval of the PC goals. You'll have that in your packet. Now, we added 2 additional items, 8 and 9, from master plan review, and the call out to look at the agribusiness and agritourism opportunities.
I move that we submit the planning commission goals as published to the board of trustees for their May meeting.
I have
Review
a
and
quick
accept.
question.
Yes.
And it's just small, but remind me why we spell marijuana with an H instead of a J. It just looks wrong to me.
It's because the state
state is an
decided
H.
at some point that they were going to spell it with an H. And a lot of local regulations adopt the state spelling even though it's wrong.
Because the nickname Mary Jane is with a J.
Do we have to use an
exactly,
H?
yeah.
Unless they marijuana.
Hawaii.
Yeah, it bugs the heck out of me too.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, searching is tricky because you have to search for it both ways. if you're
Yep.
looking for something.
Yep.
All right, we had a motion to approve the planning commission goals and send to the board by Commissioner Tremblay. There's a second.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Kupitz. I do have one amendment. You got Ed as the chairman on the top. Can you update that?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Never caught that.
Oh, on the goals?
It says Chairman Ed Kupitz at the
Third
top.
line from the top, title.
We may have started.
Did you demote me last month when I wasn't here?
See what happens? See what happens.
I can vouch that he did not.
Sorry. Yes, I'll change the chair.
In fact, he says you're doing a marvelous job.
Okay. All right, Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Hagelstein,
Yes?
Cubits,
Yes.
Vincent,
Yes.
Cant,
Yes.
Boyce,
Yes.
Arnett,
Yes.
Tremblay.
Yes.
All right, I know we've been going at it for 2 hours. You guys want to power through?
Yes.
Got a couple items left?
Yeah, these short items.
Yep. All right, so approval of the bylaws changes to reflect the updated time start of
We got
6
H.
p.m.
H.
H. I'm sorry. Oh, no,
No, we're on G.
yeah, G, 10G.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Bylaws changes for the updated start time, final draft. Any other comments or questions? Or do we have a motion to approve the amended bylaws?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tremblay, seconded by Kupitz. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Arnett,
Yes.
Boyce,
Yes.
Tremblay,
Yes.
Cant,
Yes.
Hagelstein,
Yes.
Cubits,
Yes.
Vincent.
Yes. Moving on, 10H, site plan approval expiration date extended in ordinances 161 and 187.
Yes, so the first part of this is very straightforward. It's section 6.1, ordinance 161, that's the zoning ordinance. And there is a paragraph in that section, E4, that sets forth a 1-year validity period and notes the construction has to be completed within 2 years. It just changes 1 year to 2 years everywhere it's mentioned, and then 2 years to 3 years everywhere that's mentioned. Pretty basic. 187 is a little less basic, mostly because of the conclusion I came to at the end, which is there's not a validity period in that ordinance right now. There is nothing that says the engineering approval expires at a particular time. And I did write a little paragraph to add a validity period, but I also put a paragraph at the end of the memo just saying, there's some question in my mind as to whether or not that amendment's necessary, given that the site plan validity period necessarily overlaps with the engineering approval validity. It seems like if the expiration of site plan validity would automatically void an engineering approval unless you got your extension. So I'm not really sure it's necessary to put a validity period on the engineering approval. That validity period would, if you made it 2 years, it would go beyond the site plan approval. It just seems like the site plan approval is kind of all you really need.
Joe, I've got a copy, at least from March 15th, 2011 of 187. And on page 5, number 3, it does have a period of time.
Okay.
It says, in granting approval of plans, it shall be understood that the approval of such plans be in effect for only 1 year. And I think that was the one we wanted to change to 2 years.
Gotcha.
You remember that? If not, I can give you.
Yeah, I got to see if that language is still in there or not.
I mean, I may have a dated version of it, but
Yeah.
the one I have,
It's the most recent one we had.
this is it? Yeah, so that needs to be updated.
All right. Yeah,
And that's the only spot I think it appears.
That's in 187.
what's the subsection?
187. Well, it's
So I didn't.
section
find it.
1.2. Number 3. It starts off as in granting approval of the plans.
Okay.
Do you have 187
Yeah, I've got.
online?
Well, I've got the version that's in the book, so just make sure I get a copy of what he's
When
got
you say in the book, you mean the code book?
in the code book, yeah.
187, page 3, page 5.
So yours doesn't, the code book doesn't say that?
I couldn't find any validity period in there, but make sure I get what he's looking at, and I'll check the language against what's in the code book. Regardless, though, you have a site plan validity period, and
I don't think we want a conflict with 187 and 161.
yeah, exactly. I think that if that validity period is in effect, any sub-approval that falls within that would be in effect as long as that is. And then when that lapses, the other approval is not going to keep going. You get back into the approval process. So it just seems like you really only need it in one place.
Actually, 187 is engineering design standards.
Yeah.
But I think what we wanted to do is make that a 2-year period. So it's different really from the site plan, but it's the same issue.
All right, yeah, let me just make sure that language is in the version I've got. We'll,
So would the right thing for us to do here is to have a public hearing on this issue for both of these ordinance changes?
yeah, and really the only one that you're voting on is 161. The other one's advisory to the board.
We make a recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, an advisory recommendation.
So to the extent that the 161 language that Joe gave us today, that part is fine. It's got no changes to it.
Correct.
We can go ahead and make a motion, correct?
Yes.
Public hearing on 161? Okay, that was a motion.
Okay.
At the June 5th
June,
Planning
yes.
Commission meeting. Is there a second? A second. Danny, would you call the roll, please?
Hagelstein,
Yes.
Cant,
Yes.
Barnett,
Yes.
Boyce,
Yes.
Tremblay,
Yes.
Vinson,
Yes.
Cubits.
Yes.
Motion carries.
I'll make a motion to make an advisory, for PC to make an advisory recommendation to the Board of Trustees to update ordinance 187, section 1.23, to change the effective period for those plans to 2 years versus 1.
Motion by Tremblay. I'll second. Dana, would you call the roll, please?
Cubits,
Yes.
Hagelstein,
Yes.
Cant,
Yes.
Vinson,
Yes.
Boyce,
Yes.
Tremblay,
Yes.
Barnett.
Yes.
Motion carries. That wraps up 10H. 10I is the Walker rezoning parcel. This has been tabled to no later than August 7th Planning Commission meeting. Do we need to do anything of it? Okay. Item remains tabled. That wraps up unfinished business. Is there any new business? Looks like no. Item 12, comments from committees and consultants. We already heard from agritourism, I can't say that today. Nothing from Joe. I think we're good there. Moving on. Comments from commissioners.
I had on my calendar that June ends my term.
Can you make sure that Mike gets that on the Board of Trustees?
Was there someone else?
Does anybody else? I can look up online.
Rick,
I'm sorry?
when is your due?
I'll find out.
I'm not sure, because I think I came on, I think I've got a regular term.
I've got the list hanging on my wall.
Can you double check?
Yeah, you just double check for anybody
Okay, thank you.
up for.
Good catch, man.
Google Calendar.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the same plan in place, since I think the public hearing is also still open on the Walker rezoning for further up on Van Dyke? Will you be sending out notices again? Like we are on the Muir property?
It's the verdict.
If the hearing is held open, you don't need to renotice. The hearing is still open and people are welcome to comment at the meeting.
Right.
But there's not a legal obligation to
Right.
renotice.
What's more germane in what I'm asking is, are we going to send a reminder or something to the people within that 300-foot district or area?
I mean,
Could the applicant potentially have complained if we do something that we normally
possibly. I mean, I would say, well, I mean, yeah, there's no legal requirement to renotice.
but as a courtesy?
Ask your boss.
Yeah, I mean,
Let him decide. Let Mike decide.
yeah.
I don't really see it as much different than the delay. And as a courtesy.
You mean on the other one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's the same amount of
There's
months.
no legal requirement to the other one either.
correct. And it's the same period of time, and it was a similar case where on the rezoning for the manufacturing, there were a lot of people.
When you say notice it, we don't have to notice it in the paper
No.
necessarily.
Right, yeah.
You could just send a courtesy notice
Correct.
to the,
That's what, yes.
I did do that.
You did that on 156, yes. And it was because it was such a long period of time.
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever this one comes back, you would do the same, Dana?
Yeah, that's what,
Okay, you'll check with Mike. Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? Hearing none, I move to adjourn at 8:30 PM.
Second.
Seconded by Kent, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Meeting is adjourned.